Okay, I didn't want to spend a lot of time comparing this season with the game because I always say that adaptations should stand on their own and they should work without constantly being compared. But it's hard to act like there aren't things that this season does that feel very strange with the knowledge of the game. So, spoilers for everything. The two key things that I think matter most are how the gameplay influences the narrative and some certain additions that this season did. Now, to be very honest, I am a little hazy on some of the minutia of part 2, but I do know that the season added some things that take away from the narrative pretty heavily. One of those things is that Ellie feels very helpless in a lot of situations. She's either getting bailed out by Jesse or survives because she's immune, or the people who want to kill her have to go do something else because there's something happening over here. She's combat tested, she's powerful, and she's capable in the game, but here she just feels like she's bumbling through her revenge plot. She's incompetent in a way that feels like it's almost making fun of her, and I don't understand why. She's still acting like she did in season 1, and sure, for like a 14, 15-year-old girl, yeah, it makes sense to be more impulsive or to not be battle tested. But I don't think that works after supposedly doing some sort of training for 5 years. The second thing is that because this show follows the same structure of the game, which I think is dumb, we are not getting the emotional impact of scenes that we should. I talked about this a while ago, but I think that by having Ellie and Abby scenes play one after the other like an actual chase, a lot of these moments would work better because we're moving with these characters and not one after the other. Like, by the time that Abby gets to the theater, we'll be so far removed from her crew getting killed that the impact is not gonna be the same. But I don't think that this season doesn't add anything really great to it either. I love the intro to episode 6 where we see Tommy and Joel's dad and how it perfectly sums up the entire theme of the cycle of violence that the show should be about, that I'll get to later. Jeffrey Wright coming back as Isaac is amazing, and I do hope that we get more of him because he's barely here, but every scene that he's in is great. I think the introduction of Gail and her relationship to Joel is really interesting and how it breaks Joel's relationship with Ellie. I do think it's very weird for Joel to then try and get therapy from her. Like, that doesn't make sense, but whatever, I guess. And a lot of the same positives that I had from the first season are still here. Like, of course, Pedro as Joel is still great, and I like Bella as Ellie, but I think they're better as Ellie from part 1 because they do not do that well in part 2. Part of it, again, I think is the impulsiveness and her being blinded by rage. But there are so many moments in this season where, to me, a smart person would have taken a step back at any of the moments she was placed in and been like, all right, hold up, maybe I am tripping. And I feel like the reason that it feels so much worse here is because Ellie does not have that dog in her at all. She only kills like one dude on purpose, and in one of the darkest turns for her character in the game, she can't even commit to it, and every time she has a choice, she makes the most egregious one. And she's just a giant liar and hypocrite. Like, in the town hall meeting, she lies and acts like what she's doing is for the good of the community. I also don't like the Jackson invasion either, but that's more whatever. Like, that doesn't really matter to the story itself. And then when Jesse is like, yo, Ellie, we gotta go get Tommy, you know, Joel's brother who he loves, she's like, fuck the community. I'm gonna go kill Abby even though I said I was cool with leaving. It's an interesting take to have Ellie not taking down entire squads of people by herself and not actually being this monster. But I think if they were going for that, they also can't still have that bloodlust. Otherwise, it just comes across like when you extend your hand to keep a kid away from you and then they get mad because they can't hit you. The juxtaposition of the cycle of violence between the Seraphites and the wolves should have made Ellie be introspective for like 1 second about how violence begets violence when she found the human piñatas, but she's a dum-dum, so we're not gonna explore that in the show. Like, Ellie doesn't actually seem very angry until Abby's name comes up. And again, maybe this is something that I just don't remember from the games, but I remember her being pretty stoic, much more cold. And while she would make a lot of those same bad decisions, you kind of understood it because of the time and the adrenaline that she had. And given that Dina and Ellie were only even in Seattle to bring Tommy back, it allowed Ellie to use that to go on her crusade. And since she doesn't have that here, she's just kind of a dickhead getting her friends involved, even when both they and her should know better, since a lot more time passed between Joel dying and the Seattle trip in the show. But something that I think is the reason behind a lot of the little changes that add up to this just not feeling the same is that I don't actually think the cycle of violence is the key theme anymore. I think it's selfishness. And of course, that was a key part of the series before. It's the inciting incident that even makes part 2 happen. But this season seems to make it more of a point. Joel lies to Ellie because he's selfish. Joel lies to Gail because he doesn't want to even bring Eugene back. Selfish. Abby brings her whole squad with her and makes them watch Joel's last game of golf. selfish. Tommy doesn't go after Abby because he's not selfish. And because Jesse is so selfless, he got blamed even though he was like the only voice of reason this whole season. Ellie is often the victim of violence throughout this season, but she rarely ever actually does anything violent, and most of the time she does, it's by accident, which unlike the game, makes it less about going on a warpath and more about some selfish desire to get your own justice. And I like this idea. I think on paper it works very well and helps to distinguish this a little bit more from the game, even though, again, of course, these ideas of selfishness are in the game. But I also don't think the show does a good enough job actually following this, because they'll just have someone very clearly talk about the cycle of violence. And that goes with episode 6, which is by far my favorite because it feels like something from season 1. But I don't know, this season just wasn't it for me. But I am interested to see Caitlin Dever as Abby again. When she does get time to actually act, I think she's great. And going into it, I was very nervous considering that she's like 5'2". And part of what makes Abby interesting and scary is that she looks like this and has obviously been hitting the weights, but I think Caitlin's acting compensates for that, at least so far. But I'm not sure how season 3 is even going to work, because there's no shot they're just gonna have Abby go through the same path as the game and then have season 4 be the finale, because that ending won't feel right given all that's changed in this season, and it won't include the foreshadowing of the whole "when you get your chance, I hope you do a little bit better than me." I think the scene where Ellie kills Owen and Mel is way better than what happens in the game, and I think it might make her decision in the end a little stronger. Honestly, while I don't have that much of a problem with it in the game, I don't think Ellie should still be chasing Abby by the end of season 3. I think the ending for the show has to kind of be a big departure, and the main reason I'm saying this is because if you have Ellie go through all of this while still not really fighting anybody, it's gonna look crazy. A lot of people already feel like the story is a wasted effort because of that, and I think without all of the actual build up to it, it'll be even worse here. I think it works more in the game because, yeah, Ellie goes through like dozens of people to get to her endpoint, but she was finally able to forgive because she knew that Lev would eventually come after her too, just like she did to Abby. But without all of that violence beforehand, I don't know if it'll work as well. Overall, this season definitely felt more like a step down while trying to just hit certain plot points. But I do think that they can turn it around for a strong finish that hopefully won't take another 2 seasons.